Hey, how are you doing, everybody? Welcome to the channel. In this video we are going to talk about strings, get to understand what strings really are, not that kind of a string, and what are the things which you can do with strings in Python, what are the few inbuilt functions that Python gives us in strings. Honestly, there are a lot of inbuilt functions in Python. I will cover a few very basic which you will need, which everybody will need, and I rather tell all the other functions whenever the need of using them arrives in any future video. So with that being out of the way, let's get to understand what a string is. Now, if you haven't checked my last video out, in which I tell about variables and introduce the few simple data types in Python, one of which being a string, I tell that a string is anything that is enclosed between two quotation marks. Now that statement is true, but it is not the true definition of what a string is. So what a string is, in a very true definition of it, is it's a sequence of characters enclosing two quotation marks. Now what does it mean by being a sequence of characters is that everything you put in a string is sequence. It has a number, it has a position, and it's always going to be having the same position. These positions are defined by something known as indexes. For example, as you can see, the string ABCD, the A stands for the 0th position. Now in Python, the indexing starts from 0. In most of the languages, the indexing starts from 0. There are a few in which the indexing starts from 1. But now that we are learning about Python, so let's just keep this in mind, that anything, the first position in Python is always going to be starting with position 0, not 1. So that is all you need to understand about strings in definition. Now let's get into the coding aspect of of strings and let's get to understand what we can do with string, what are the few operations we can apply with string, what are the few inbuilt methods that Python gives us to work on a string. Alright, now that you understand what a string is and what indexes are, let's get to understand why indexes are important in Python. Now, in this following script, we have a name, Robert White, and when you print out this name, it prints us the whole name. What if you just want to print the very first character inside of the string? Indexes are powerful over here because you can just tell your print to print out the first character, which is always 0, by the way, and when you run this, it should print out only the capital R. Now this is very important because this branches out to a concept known as slicing. And what slicing is cutting your string to get only a specific part of the string which you want. For example, I just want to print Robert and not ignore everything that is after it. Now if you look at the length of Robert, it's a 6-letter word. So the positioning of T is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is in the 5th index, and you can tell your print function, you can tell Python that I want only the characters from 0th position to the 5th position. Now I know I have type 6 over here because in Python the last character when you're slicing is excluded. So if you print this out, it should print out Robert, and that's it. This is known as slicing. Now in Python there is another feature of indexes is known as negative indexing. Now what negative indexing is same as indexing, but it starts from the negative position, and it starts from the last position of the string. And this is also quite important to know because in Python sometimes you work with very huge strings and you just want the ending few characters of the string, and in that moment it's very easy to use the negative indexing instead of using the normal indexing. Now how negative indexing works is instead of this being 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., it starts from -1, -2, -3, 4, 5, etc. So say if I wanted to print like the I, it's in the 3rd position from the last character, so all I can do is just print -3, and if we print it, it should print out the I which we need. Alright, now that you understand slicing and how indexes are useful, let's get into understanding one more important feature of strings that is known as concatenation. Now concatenation, by definition, is just merging two strings together. Like say for this example, we have two variables, first and last, and we want a string which holds the full name, not just the first name or the last name. That can be achieved by concatenation of these two strings, which is done by the plus operator. So if you just do first plus last and assign it to a new variable, and now I'm assigning this just so I can print it out easily. So if I print out name, you can see that it prints out Robert White. There's also one more thing, that there is no space bar in between these two. That's because when you concatenate two strings, you're literally merging the two strings. And as this both strings don't have a space bar either after or before the first and the last respectively, there won't be any space bar when you're concatenating them. This could be easily overcome by adding one more string with a space bar, with a space in between. And now if you print it out, it should come out very nice with the first name and the last name separated by a space. Now with concatenation out of the way, let's get to understanding some of the inbuilt methods that Python gives us to play with strings. Now one of the most simplest thing you can do with a string is to change the case of the string. For this given strip, we have a name John. Now if you print out this name, it prints it out as it is. But what if you want your string to be in a proper case formatting? For example, it should be capitalized. So for that, we have an inbuilt function known as .title. Now what .title does, it capitalizes the first character in your string. So if you print it out, it's just print out John with the J being capital. Now there is also one more function known as .upper, which is, as the name suggests, will make everything go uppercase. On the contrary, there is one more function known as .lower, which will make the whole thing to go, which doesn't make any difference in this example because everything is already in a lowercase, but it makes your whole string to go into lowercase. Now these functions are somewhat important, especially when you're working with strings a lot and you're storing the strings in your function, because you cannot always depend on the user to give you a string in a proper format. And sometimes it's good that you convert the string into a uniform case so that you can work with it in the future and then present it in whichever case you want. Now in Python, there are also a few functions which are used to removing the white spaces inside of your strings. Now what white spaces are? All the non-printing characters inside of your string. That can be a spacebar, that can be a tab, that can be a new line, anything like that. Now why removing white spaces is important? Because sometimes you might be working with a string and you want a string to be very specific. For example, for the human eye, this string hunt is very normal and we just ignore the white spaces before and after. But in Python, these white spaces hold a value. These white spaces have their own indexes, and you cannot ignore that, or your Python does not ignore that. So it's very important to remove white spaces when you're working with strings, just so you run into lesser bugs. Now to remove white spaces, there are a few inbuilt functions, one of which is .strip. Now what .strip does is literally strips the string of any white spaces in the beginning and the end of your string. So for example, if we .strip name, and if I print this out, very sorry, and we print this out, you can see the white space before and after hunt has been removed. Let's say your string is this is hunt, and then you strip it. You see that the space in between of your characters is not gone. So there's also a function known as rstrip, and what rstrip does is it strips any white space at the very end of your string. It doesn't do both the beginning and the end, but it just focuses on the last part of your string. So if you print this out right now, it should have a space bar at the beginning still, but the one in the end has been removed. As you can see, there is a space bar, then this is hunt. The contrary to it is .lstrip, which will remove any white spaces at the beginning of the string but won't remove any white spaces at the end of the string. And yeah, that's really it. I don't want to cover it in this video. Now again, there are a lot of methods in Python which are for strings. Doing all of them will make the video tremendously long, so I would rather just explain those methods to you whenever the need comes to use them in the near future. So I hope you guys learned something from this. If you did, click the like button down below, subscribe if you haven't already to the channel, and also share this video to your friends. It will help me out, it will help them out to understand Python. With that being said, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Till that time, stay fit, stay awesome, and bye bye. And yeah, there are a few links to my socials on there if you want to just check it out.